The face of fishing is changing, and so is the climate. In September 2017, Hurricane Maria hit Dominica in full force as a Category 5 hurricane. The entire country was devastated. Dominica's fishing industry was all but wiped out.
Just before Maria, I bought my third boat. I left Dominica actually the Sunday before the storm, so it came Monday. I had 3 boats and all got destroyed. It took me up until 8 months or so after Maria before I was able to get another boat so that I could start fishing. It's an issue right now in Dominica to get your boat insured because there's not any of the insurance company that is willing to take the risk of insuring boats.
The total estimated value of fishing boats, engines and gear that were damaged, destroyed or lost amounted to 11.3 million EC dollars, or about 4 million US dollars.
Based on our 2011 fisheries census, at least 60-70% of boats were either reported damaged or lost. We saw tremendous disruption to livelihoods. Almost 100% of all the boats which were housed or stationed here were completely lost. Further to that, we had the critical infrastructure. And evident as right where we are standing is the Roseau Fisheries Complex. Roseau had produced over 60% of all of the ice production, had almost 90% of all the fish storage capacity. On the top floor you had the offices of the Fisheries Division and the Environmental Coordinating Unit at the second floor, and then you can see exactly what the building looked like.
So this is basically the open floor area of the Fisheries Division Department office. Hurricane Maria caused a lot of damage to our infrastructure. As you can see, our office was completely destroyed, but also towards all of our records, physical records that is. Luckily we also keep digital records, but a lot of our physical records, as you can see, were substantially damaged and or in many cases destroyed and cannot be used again. As a result of Hurricane Maria's destruction, we've learned that it's very important to actually store your records digitally, on-site, off-site and online. Therefore, we can be more resilient when another storm hits, so that even if we lose these paper records, we still have backup to go off of.
Historically, Fisheries Division in terms of data collection, was mostly centered around production. But never before we had not concentrated too much on the social aspects. We found ourselves very data poor when the hurricane happened. We couldn't advise. We didn't know which fishers were able to do what other jobs. Of course, because as you know, a lot now, much emphasis is given on alternatives. And alternative is one of the main pillars of resilience. So this new information, first and foremost, going to lead into as a policy tool and advice in the event something happens.
As storms become more intense and frequent, Caribbean islands need to develop better approaches to disaster risk reduction in the long term. Planning for climate change and devising methods to adapt to the increasing challenges that are threatening our way of life have become urgent priorities. In St. Lucia, stakeholders from government, civil society and the private sector all along the value chain have worked together to devise St. Lucia's National Climate Change Adaptation Policy and have fine-tuned sectoral adaptation plans, one that specifically addresses fisheries.
Sectoral adaptation plans or strategies and action plans, SASAPs, have been developed for tourism. That one was developed in 2015, but we've also developed with stakeholders SASAPs for water, agriculture, and fisheries.
The government of St. Lucia in June of 2018 approved a sectoral adaptation plan for the fisheries sector. This is very important because it sets the tone or the pace for the fisheries sector in St. Lucia. It tells us or it gives us information with regards to what are some of the adaptation measures we should be implementing within the sector. It focuses on, one, rebuilding or maintaining the health of the resource, in addition to looking at practices, how are people extracting it, and third, focusing on how are we now going to change mindsets or to adjust to what we're doing based on what we know is going to happen or is already happening. So in terms of the SASAP, it was done with extensive consultation with the individuals within the sector, particular resource users, because we realize that ultimately climate change, whether it impacts the environment and the ecological aspect, it's really of critical importance because it affects people's livelihoods, it affects people's earnings, and as such, we brought them into the process and engaged them so that we looked at both, one, ensuring that they're resource-based, so what they tap into is managed effectively, in addition to looking at how are they going to adjust their livelihoods to now a climate where their resource base may be diminished, may be reduced, etc.
For fisheries in the Caribbean to be truly sustainable, we must adopt an integrated approach to the management of the land and sea. Reducing added pressures on the marine ecosystem from poor land use practices, coastal development, and overfishing will help to make our fisheries more resilient to climate change, as will ensuring fisheries sector assets like landing sites are built to withstand the climate change impacts to come.
But our biggest effort to date has been with respect to raising the standards at fish landing sites to make them more eco-friendly and more resilient to climate change. For example, right here at the Castries Fishers landing site, we intend to implement a project to be funded under the SASAP program, which will reduce the carbon footprint of fishers and at the same time improve their ability to function and service themselves going to sea and coming back from sea on a daily basis.
Climate change is already changing the availability of fish we depend upon, so we must change how we manage our fisheries resources to ensure fish for today and fish for tomorrow.